At what point should you stop listening and start advising? It's a pretty rich question. And whether it's been said exactly like that or slightly differently, I know I've run across this in the past with my clients. So today, we're going to talk about it on the podcast.
You're listening to Breaking BizDev with John Tyerman and Mark Wainwright. Conversations that break down, beat up, and redefine business development for the professional services firms of tomorrow. And now for your hosts, John and Mark.
All right, welcome to another episode of Breaking BizDev. I'm John, he's Mark, and today we are going to explore the big question, Mark, which you introduced. When should you stop listening and start advising your clients? So I think this is a very, very interesting question.
Yeah, we talk all the time, John, about listening and understanding.
Yep.
But at some point, you got to stop and start advising. When does that happen? Is it all of a sudden? Do you do it really early? Do you have to ease your way kind of into it? At what point do you stop listening and start advising? That's the question. And I know I know there's people out there. I mean, if I have particular clients that I've talked to about this exact topic, they're like rubbing their hands together, like, oh, now we're gonna hear them really dig into this one. So yeah, it's a meaty one for sure. What you have any burning examples of this at all in your head, John?
So I had a prospect recently, an opportunity. They're a B2B service provider. They have an existing podcast. They wanted to do like an audit and strategy engagement, right? Before moving into monthly production support. So they really wanted to me to understand. They're paying me to understand their business, really.
Yeah.
Understand their podcast. And they were on the fence with working with me. So they wanted to see a sample of a deliverable. And so this is where you might not agree with my approach here.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm curious to hear your thoughts. But so what I did was I went through an old deliverable, and I didn't want to just send that to them, right? What I did was I went in and I CIA style redacted some key recommendations and what I consider some secret sauce. But I wanted to showcase the deliverable and the breadth of the insights. I also wanted to showcase my ability to produce some digital media. So instead of sending them the redacted PDF, I did a video walkthrough for them. It was only like 5 or 10 minutes, but I didn't want to give them a PDF that they could reverse engineer.
I'm tracking with you. I just want to make sure everybody out there, the listeners, are tracking with you. So sure. Because the question is, right, at what point do we stop listening and start advising, right? So you saw this as don't ask us any more questions. We want to see your stuff, which is one of the points, right? They're like, right. We want you to stop asking us questions, and we just want you to show us some stuff, right? Show us a deliverable, which is a slippery slope, and it's a trap, John. We were talking about traps in the past. So this was a trap, right? Clearly. So you did not completely take the bait. You said, all right, so you took some content, redacted it, did whatever you could to create a conversation piece where you could continue to listen, right? Showed him something. It's like, what do you think? There's this, there's that. And you got some questions back and all that other stuff. So how'd it go? I mean, how'd that whole thing play out?
Well, they're a client now. So we're going to go through that audit and strategy engagement, and we'll see what happens after that. But it worked.
You made a conscious decision. I'm not going to be prescriptive, right? I'm not going to tell, or if I tell, I'm just going to tell a little bit, and then I'm going to leave the rest open for us to discuss, co-develop, whatever else. So there you go. All right. Okay. I like it. That's a good one.
All right. So that was my first example. What's on your list for, at what point should you stop listening and start advising?
Yeah. So this is, a lot of people feel like this is a rhetorical question and it's just a big softball for me to hit. But so, right, I come across experts all the time that want to stop asking questions and get right to, air quotes, the work, right? Because the sales stuff, discovery stuff is not the work. The work is the pen to paper, doing the engineering firms want to engineer, right? The architects want to design. It's all those all this is consultants want to consult, right? They want to solve business problems. When you stop asking questions means that you stop discovery. You're like, all right, we're not going to ask any more questions. We've learned a sufficient amount of information. That's what people are thinking, right? They're like, it's like we've learned enough to be able to apply some solution, some recommendation, whatever else, right? Unfortunately, if you shortcut, or maybe heck, John, even skip discovery altogether, right? You've pre-sold yourself on an approach or a solution even before for this meeting. You've already got this thing in your head. Like there's no more layers of the onion for you. You're not constantly unwrapping this thing, trying to get to the root cause, whatever else. There's something burning there in your head, and I'm seeing it.
We talk about curiosity and inquiry being two very important like skill sets, right? So it seems like curiosity would be at play here, right? So you ask enough questions that you think you know what the solution should be, but you don't know what you don't know, right? And so like how can you maintain that curiosity in that situation?
The big fat answer, right? The big reveal in this whole thing is you can't ever, because if you've got your head in the right place, and your head needs to be in the right place. It's like, I don't have all the answers.
Right.
And I need to keep exploring. That's gonna exist throughout the entire, not just the entire sales cycle, but throughout the engagement. If you stop asking questions too early in this whole relationship, and we're talking the span of the relationship, John, we're not just talking like closing the deal, right? From day one to day whatever in your entire relationship, if you stop asking questions, that's going to show up throughout your entire relationship. I mean, someone who's genuinely curious and genuinely interested, the sort of ever-present pursuit of answers and opinions and feedback and all that other stuff, like that's so critical throughout the entire engagement. So if you stop, right? If you stop and you provide your expert, when do we start applying our expertise and stop asking questions? It's like, well, you don't.
That's a great mindset shift. I like that. So discovery is never ending. That's not just a part of the sales process. That's a part of the client engagement, is a continuous discovery, because change happens all the time. New information is introduced all the time.
I've got some little layers of detail I think that we can kind of dig into a little bit on that one, but I'm just going to say the obvious right up front. I'm not going to wait to the end. It's like, well, you don't, right? So, all right, there you go. I'll now that people have heard from me, I'll ping pong it back to you. You're like, oh, Mark.
Well, at some point you have to start advising. So then maybe the question is less, when should you stop listening and asking questions, and when should we start advising? Right. And so I guess that like, it's a good segue into the next point on my list is like, once you fully understand the prospect's situation, and I guess like to date, maybe if I could amend that a little bit based on what we were just talking about with new information coming in, things changing. It's like when I worked in research, there's this thing called a confidence interval. You're probably familiar with this, right? Where it's like this survey of 1,000 people is representative at 95% confidence, right? So that's like the research. It's essentially the equivalent of saying that if we were to project this out to the entire population, there's a 95% chance that we would replicate the results.
Yeah.
So I guess like, let's use that confidence interval as sort of a rating. Like what percent in your mind, Mark, what percent confidence would you need to have of the prospect situation in order to start co-creating solutions?
Are you asking me? You're
I'm asking you, what do you think?
Come on.
It can't be 100%.
I just said we never really stop, right? We never stop being curious. We never stop asking questions. Of course, I'm going to walk that back a little bit for sure, right? So, but we're getting there. We're getting there.
We got to have the clickbait moment, right?
Yeah. We're getting there.
What I have here on my bullet point list is when the prospect starts introducing solutions. There's a switch that happens, at least in my experience, when I'm asking questions in early on in the sales process. There's a point where in my own head, I'm like, okay, the solution's becoming clear. Maybe I'm pretty sure I know. But once I start hearing a prospect start to say, okay, well, we can do this and we can do this, and they start bringing these ideas to the table, that's in my mind, there, we've turned a corner and we can start developing solutions.
No, I totally agree with that one. But as you and I have mentioned in the past, is like we're still at the point now where we're ready to present some recommendations, typically 3 options, but we're not certain which direction they're going to go. So we're still asking questions. Here's option 1. What do you think? Here's option 2. What do you think? Here's option 3. Yep. What do you think? So we've talked about how to use presenting those 3 options or 3 recommendations as a tool in the sales process to guide decision making. We will often have in our heads, whatever the recommended option is, we're like, yeah, okay, that's kind of the direction we need to go. But we still, even through pricing and presenting options, we still need to be asking the questions. Oh, what do you like about this one? What don't you like? What do you like about this one? What don't you like? We're still curious. We're never creating those 3 option tables 100% confident that they're going to pick one. Mm-hmm. We should obviously be prepared to respond when they say, well, I don't know, you're the expert. What do you think? Right. Sure. Pick option B. But we're never certain about it.
I would say that like even the fact that like even the act of presenting 3 different options, you even said it yourself, like it's guiding prospects, right? So that's sort of a form of advisory, saying like, here are the different paths we could go down, right?
Yeah.
So I guess we're starting to kind of like get into it a little bit.
Some people that have listened to me in the past, and maybe even clients, they're like, oh, there's a magical moment that Mark's going to say, is that here's when you stop being curious and asking all these questions, and here's when you start sort of dictating direction. It's like, nope, we got to go this way, because there are so many clients out there, so many people, experts in professional services firms. It's like that's all they want. They're like, just we have to stop yakking and start telling the client what to do, right? Which direction to go, whatever else. And I think, John, we probably should put this in the beginning of the episode, but I think one of the things that prompted this episode was a recent interaction that I had on LinkedIn. There was someone who had posted something, and it was generally in supportive of a consulting friend, connection, professional that they know, that said, oh yeah, no, we're not going to, we're not doing the options. We've given our client one direction, and that's what our client wants and needs, because we're the expert. So we're going to dictate a particular direction. And I think this was tied to options and pricing and other stuff. And the conversation kind of wove its way around a little bit. And as most do, this one ended up, it's like, oh yeah, in certain situations, as the consultant, it's appropriate to stop asking questions and start being the advisor. That I think we kind of like situationally, sure. But I think in the vast majority of situations, no, it's never okay to kind of be that sort of advisor who says, okay, here's the path, take it now. And I know I'm sounding kind of like it's an ultimatum sort of a thing, but yeah, that was kind of the nature of the conversation a little bit. What we've been referring to is, what is the moment in time, right? I think people are thinking like, what is the moment in time, right? Tell us when is the right moment. And for me, it's not a time thing. It's an information thing, right?
Yep. Okay.
So you can stop asking questions and start advising once you have sufficient information to do so. And there are 3 bullets here that I wrote down. That first one is, what is the real problem? Not just the symptom.
Not what they say, what's underneath.
What is the root cause?
Okay.
If you and the client can both sort of acknowledge this and respond to that question, step 1, check. Step 2, and it's a pretty common question. What's your vision of success? What does success look like? What are we going to measure, and how will we know we've crossed the finish line successfully? And the third one is something that, man, I talk about this a lot, and so few people are willing to go take the conversation this far. But unless you've asked the question and come up with a sufficient response together, you're still not there yet. You still have to dig deeper. And the last one is this, right? What is the cost of inaction for them, right? And I call that implications. Like, what are the implications of doing nothing, or doing it this particular way and not that particular way, or doing it to this degree and not to this degree? Or so what is the cost of inaction? And until both of you together have uncovered the answer to that, you're not there yet, right? So I think that the moment is not time-based, it's information-based. And I think together, you need to uncover the real problem. You need to be clear on the picture of results. Mm-hmm. And everybody needs to be clear on the cost of inaction, because the cost of inaction is the fire that is going to keep everybody moving, right? It is the prime motivator. It is not these. The vision of success is a great motivator. Sure. I mean, people can picture you're on your marathon, you're running, and you're picturing yourself kind of crossing the finish line. Sure.
Picturing yourself.
You're picturing yourself. So sure, that's a motivator in certain circumstances. We're talking about professional services and not necessarily marathons, but people are trying to attain that picture. A lot of times when we cross the finish line, it's not that exact picture anyways, right? But we've got a kind of a general idea of what that picture is. But the thing that is pushing you step after step, right? To use our marathon analogy here, step after step, mile after mile, is like, if I stop now, like, what's the downside? Like, all this time I've spent, what is the cost of inaction, right? And I'm projecting a little bit because, John, I'm not a marathon runner, right? So
neither
the cost of inaction, right, exactly, right. The cost of inaction is, wow, I let a bunch of people down that were supporting me. I spent years training for this. That is the cost of not achieving this, is a prime motivator relative to crossing the finish line is vision of success. Great. Yeah. High fives all around. Good. We've achieved what we wanted to, but the payoff is like all this time, this energy, this effort that you've invested into it. So, and people have to lay bare, like, what is the cost of inaction if we do nothing? It's like, oh, well, yeah, we'll be 10 times worse than we are today. So I think that's it for me, right? There's the big reveal for me, is that when do you stop? You stop when you have those 3 questions answered.
Well, I would say that it's even more than that. I'd say it's not just when you have those questions answered, but it's when you and your client are in alignment on the answers to those questions.
Yeah, well put. You're listening to Breaking BizDev,
the podcast that beats up, breaks down, and redefines business development for the professional services firms of tomorrow. Your hosts are John Tyerman, founder of Red Cedar Marketing, the podcast marketing company for experts and professional services firms,
and Mark Wainwright, principal consultant and founder of Wainwright Insight, the fractional sales manager and sales consultant to professional services firms.
If you find this podcast helpful, please help us by following the show and leaving a review on Apple Podcasts.
And now, back to the show.
Yeah, so it's the root cause, success metrics, and then the cost of inaction, the opportunity cost of it all. Love that.
We forget about that one. And the reason I underscore that last one is that that's the hardest one. That very last one, it's the cost of inaction. That one is so hard to figure out. And the right posture and the right mindset coming into all of this, one of inquiry and curiosity and digging deeper and wanted to lay bare all these things that are kind of like buried, issues that are unrecognized, opportunities that they don't see, all that stuff. Like, what are the implications of all of this? Because I think there's just too much assumption that happens. It's like, well, sure, we just have to do this, or bad things will happen, or we want to achieve this particular thing, or that's what the client wants, so we're just going to go do that. It's like, well, what's driving them? What is driving them to do this? So there you go. That's my thing. So that's the point, right? When you and your client can successfully state the response to those things together, as in alignment with clarity, that's when you stop.
That's good. And that doesn't have to always happen pre-sale too. I think that there are times where the answers to those questions could unearth themselves in like I want to go back to this audit example, right? So getting to be able to take that extra step in understanding and digging deep into those root causes and what the success metrics look like. I mean, maybe in my world, there's a lot of times where clients don't know what success should look like.
Sure. So what you're referring to there is we're going to bite off a chunk of this work. So you're probably able to answer specifically to, let's say, an audit, or with a number of clients that I work with is like there's an initial, not to confuse sort of sales discovery with sort of consulting discovery, but they're very similar to an audit, right? Where you're uncovering information. It's like there's often an opportunity to do that work. And I think likely you can answer those 3 questions pretty easily on that chunk of work, right? So what is the cost of inaction of not doing an audit, right? So you're going to say, all right, we're going to sign up for this first little phase. What is the cost of inaction of not doing an audit? It's like, well, we could get started on the wrong things. We could be
directions
focused
in the wrong way. Yeah.
We could be out of alignment. So you can probably answer confidently with your client. You could respond, what does success looks like? It's like, well, success looks like we have a number of questions answered. We now have more answers than we do questions, right? Because coming into an audit or a discovery phase or whatever else, it's like we have more questions than answers, and an audit gives you more answers now than questions. So that's, I think, sure. So you're looking at it piece by piece. You're not going to be able to, answer the full big question on why you're doing this big thing right now, but at least, okay, this is why we're going to do this first thing, and then after that, maybe we tackle the big one. So there you go. It's not time-based. It's not, isn't one meeting enough? Isn't a 60-minute conversation enough to get going? It's like, gosh, we met with them 4 times and they keep adding new people and there's new things coming up. And it's like, well, sounds like you're not ready for a contract.
Sounds like there's still a lot of discovery to happen.
Sounds like there's still a lot left to do, right? But the client's getting impatient. It's like, well, the client isn't leading this, and if they are, then you're in a bad place, right? And if you're actually the expert, then you know how best to navigate all of this, because you do this more than they do, right? Navigating this buying selling process more than they do, because you're selling your stuff more than they're buying it, right? That's just how it works. So there you go. All right, John, did I respond to that sufficiently?
I think this is awesome. I love those 3 bullets. Is there anything else that you had, Mark, in terms of like at what point should you stop listening and start advising?
No, if people can take those bullet points, right, that we listed there at the end, if they can treat that as their litmus test. I do this with my clients, John. It's, I will ask them the 3 simple questions. It's like, do you really know what's causing this? Have they been explicit about what success looks like? And is everybody super clear on it? What happens if they do nothing? That one rarely gets answered. So people can do that confidently. I'm like, great. All right, let's put forward your 3 recommendations that will get them part of the way there, all the way there, or all the way there with gold gilded something. It's like, right, there's our 3 options. Now we're ready for that.
I'm going to answer my own question. I'm going to say anywhere between 90 and 95% confident.
Yeah.
That's what it is in statistics. Let's apply the same methodology here.
I'll take it. John, if I was 95% successful in whatever the heck I was doing, I'd be pretty happy with it for sure. So, all right, folks, John's is 95% and mine is 3 questions. There you go.
Yep.
Good. Okay.
This has been an awesome conversation. I think those 3 questions, that's the golden nugget. That's the big takeaway from this one for our listeners. So until next time.
Thanks for listening to Breaking BizDev. Subscribe on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, or listen to the show at breakingbizdev.com. This episode was produced by Red Cedar Marketing. If you think a business podcast is right for your company, visit redcedarmarketing.com to learn more.